You know, I must say you came at a very right time.
Really?
I was thinking about houses.
Great.
What can your company offer me?
EJ Investments can offer you a lot. We're unique in the market.
Okay.
We own our properties and we ensure that they're developed with modern technologies. They're affordable and they are strategic locations. We don't just sell pieces of land, but we create settlements.
What makes your company different from others?
We're different from all real estate companies in the Gambia because what we have to offer is affordability, safety, and security. We ensure that you get a legal contract from when you pay your deposit, and within 4 weeks of paying your final settlement, we make sure you receive your title deed.
4 weeks?
4 weeks.
That's interesting.
Yes. Now tell me, what real estate serves your needs?
It's absolutely EJ Investment and Real Estate Agency.
Welcome to another special edition of the Brunch with me, Joy Nwama. Of course, I'm not alone in the studio. I am with, on my immediate right, my co-host, who is no other than Nimasata Kamara, and as well as you know how I love to say it or introduce him, who is a bona fide member of the house, Mr. Mustafa Adabo. Welcome on board, lady and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
So straight to our purpose of being here today, we will be Mustafa Dabo will be taking us through the newspaper review and alongside the Kerr Fatou website review as well. Mustafa, what have been trending over the week?
Thank you very much. It's not been a very eventful week, but you know, a lot of other things had happened.
Right.
First, let me say that most of the things that were covered in newspapers were as well on the Kerr platform.
Right.
Issues such as the establishment of the Land Commission over the week, the presentation of the report of the Faraba Bantan Commission to the presidency, Tom Bonjada's interview with us. Remember, we've had an interview with him where he talked about a host of issues, including the promises the president made in the State of the Nation address, and so we've also covered and we've seen in various newspapers the issue of you know, crop failure. You know, government didn't put it that way, but
yeah.
It's I mean insufficient or erratic rain that caused what. You know, government reported places about 1.7 million people at risk of food insecurity. We've seen also in newspapers the state visit of King Leslie III, the King of Lesotho. I must say he's a very humble king. I traveled with them to Njobeng village in Fuladu West, and a paramilitary guy walked him and wanted to. You know, he was sweating profusely. I mean, because we were in a very small room at a women garden in Joburg where he visited. You know, as part of the FAO delegation
Right.
to the village. It was the FAO nutrition ambassador.
Okay.
And he was sweating profusely. Somebody wanted to come and ask people to give him some space and try to, but the guy said no. I mean. And he flew in the country on SN Brussels. I mean, like a normal human being. So
He's a king.
He's an amazing, and you know, when he speaks, he was quite inspiring. You know, and so you know, his coming in and going out was both covered in the press, and he had a meeting during his visit with the president and the presidency, and they talked about a number of issues, including joint bilateral issues.
Right.
We know that also The case did not go, the Lycean case, the former lawmaker who reportedly insulted some people.
Right.
The case did not go, and because it coincided with the Muslim New Year,
Oh.
on the 20th. So, but the police had earlier issued a statement to ask people not to go there with a party flag or party T-shirts, party logos, because this is not a political event. I was there on the first day when he appeared, and it was quite tense because there were two sides each, and there was an attempt to politicize it. I think that was a good move from the police. Actually, many people appreciated it. So that was in the news, but also not long ago, I mean, my guys, the talkies, have given some cameras to GRTS to strengthen their capacity ahead of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation Summit, which we expect to host in 2019 November. So that was actually over the weekend, but we covered it, even though, because we do things instantaneously, or like newspapers that come the following day.
Right.
As it happens, we report.
Sure.
On our platform, Kerr website. Also, the finance minister, while we were in Joburg actually with the king, the finance minister was in the National Assembly. He was there actually with the Vice President Hussein Dabo, also was there for question and answers. The finance minister did reveal some figures with regards to the government expenditure on tickets and, so.
Yeah.
So, and then, there were a lot of other issues such as the debate on the national state of the nation address, and there were some vocal voices like Salah saying if Barrow actually decides he is going to go for 5 years, then that means he should expect that people would expect him to design policies and programs that are going to alleviate poverty. Because the coalition agenda, you may know, that was designed to just do reforms.
Yeah.
In other words, he comes 3 years doing necessary institutional and policy and legal reforms and leave. So, but if he intends to stay for 5 years, he will be...
His mandate would have to extend beyond that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's what Salah said, that a lot of other people agreed, including some UDP members, and the member for Busumbala. I can't recall his name, but it will come later.
Yeah.
The Semlex ID card, we also know it's going
Right.
to start in October 1st. And so we will talk about these and a lot of other issues, but one particular thing that interests me, and probably we may want to talk about it briefly, is the issue of crop
Failure. In
let's
quotation.
say crop failure,
Yeah.
but some say...
I think it was a hunger alert that has been done by the government in anticipation for the outcome of this rainy season. I don't know how they reached this conclusion, whether there have been a research conducted to understand that this is actually what the outcome is going to be. But based on my own observation, because I am from a farming village and I've been there several times during the rainy season, I know that this is not very far from the truth. It's very highly likely that a majority of the farming communities may not necessarily have yielded the harvests that can potentially alleviate hunger in the coming months. So I think it is very prudent to make such an alert in case if things do not turn out positively, as we are anticipating they may turn out negatively. There will be that support from the various organizations that are necessary to bring the necessary support. But here is something that also crosses my mind. It's why are we anticipating crop failure? What has gone wrong? Is it because there is not enough rain? Is it because people are now are not very active in terms of agriculture? Because that also may be the case.
Right.
My observation, though, is that we keep having this traditional way of cultivating based on subsistence farming, and there haven't been much return for the farmers. So there is not necessarily anything that motivates them to go to the farms to farm as it used to be done.
Right.
Perhaps because what they yield or what is being yielded at the end of the rainy season is not enough to sustain the family, which is one. Two, if they are doing it for commercial purposes, where are their crops being sold? That may be another reason.
Right.
But also something that I have been pondering on myself is it possible that our rain patterns have changed? Is there
Climate change, yes, obviously. I mean, if you look at the rain pattern, it has changed. I mean,
yeah, it has shifted, and it doesn't seem to me as that farmers are aware of this. Because there is a special month, for example, I think farming in the Gambia starts around May, June. And traditionally, this is when rain also starts. But we have seen, especially since last year and this year, pure rain starting around August, September. And at this time, people have already made up their mind, especially farmers have already made up their mind that the rain is not going to come.
Now, let me ask this question to you, Nyamasata. Do you think that Gambians would really go hungry? Because I was made to understand that most of the food that we consume are being imported. So why would the government say that 1.7 million people might be at risk of going hungry?
This is an interesting question. I think this has also been at the heart of some research that I have been involved in. It's how many of Gambians are dependent on their own production.
Right.
Right? We know that with migration happening at a rate that is unprecedented in the Gambia, a lot of people are dependent on the remittances that are coming from outside. But also a lot of people are dependent on family members they have within these areas, in the Combo areas, who are dependent on their civil service salaries, right? So it's hardly do you have a family in the villages, for example, who depend on their own production throughout the year. So, like I said, I'm from the farming community, and I have dependent family also. The number of months that is purely for the families living there in supporting their own, culinary activities, it doesn't go beyond 3 months. So if they were farming like they do in the rainy seasons, their produces do not last them more than 3 months.
Now, may I come in to establish some facts here? Because if you look at the statistics, 1.3 million, 7 million. This is actually not entirely a farming population.
Of course.
Gambia doesn't have a farming population of 1.7 million.
Sure.
Gambia has a farming population of perhaps around 300,000.
Isn't 1.7 million the entire population?
Because if you look at, there is a government report that was done jointly by the United Nations Development Program and Gambia government in 2015. It's called the Multidimensional Poverty and Inclusive Growth Report. Now, this report did a research, and it confirmed that agriculture has actually declined from employing 70% of the population to 31% of the population over a decade, like over a 10-year period, like in the past 10 years. So if you look at that, now, we have a country of 2 million people. When agriculture's employing 31% from that 70% that it used to employ, then you can safely say agriculture may have employed about 200,000 to 300,000 people. So I think the government statistics, in fact, does not necessarily mean people who are entirely dependent on agriculture or people who are involved in agricultural activity, but instead Gambians in general. I think they are looking at food insecurity like it used to happen in the Jawara days, where you have food aids into the country and people would have double fat and all that stuff, and food aid for people who are food insecure. So this may not necessarily be confined to farming communities, but Gambians in general. I think the government did not come out to say this, but this is what they actually meant, because 1.7 million is definitely not Gambia's farming population.
Yeah, the problem I find with this kind of reports is that sometimes they don't give you the information with which you can work with to analyze effectively, right? And this is the reason why I said I don't understand what this is based on, what research this is based on, but I think there's a correlation between this alert to crop failure.
Absolutely.
Right? So if that is the case, then we may safely conclude that this is as a result of agricultural failure as
Yes, yes.
right? But how many people in the Gambia are dependent on agriculture? That's the question.
But then again, if you look at the agricultural output in this country, you look at it from the perspective of you said it. Most of the Gambians are subsistence farmers, means we rely entirely on agricultural production for survival. Most of the people who are living in rural areas. Now you would see that one reason why, according to experts, I mean even Action Aid did a study which came out last week, and they've said, and this is followed up by several reports by government and including the one I've mentioned, which said that it's partly because of the decline in agricultural productivity that we've seen even the number of irregular migrants coming from, because you know that Gambia has the fastest rate of urbanization in Africa. Like we are at 58%, like 58% of Gambians now live in urban area. Yeah. And it's growing at a very fast rate. It's a result of the failure of the agricultural system. But because the agriculture can no longer put food in people's pocket or put food on their table. But also that may also be as a result of climate change. And you know, you've seen erratic rainfall and all that. From 2011 we have a crop failure. 2014 we have insufficient rainfall. 2015 we have the same thing. And even though Jambe in the past would have so much pride not to declare crop failure, but we know Gambians have gone hungry. You and I've always come up with figures like this. Yeah. I think now what we are seeing is just the honesty of the government to come out and say people are hungry.
No, but
this
has happened before. During Jambe's time, there was an alert like this before.
There was but that was in 2011. In 2014, there was.
I agree. Climate change is a contributing factor, but I think there is very little motivation in the field of agriculture.
That was actually the question I was going to ask Mustafa. Do you think that the government is doing enough to promote agriculture in the Gambia? Because looking at it from 2011, based on the statistics that you've given, till date, people are still having problems in the agricultural sector. So do you think that the government is doing enough to boost or incentivize the farmer, be it in rural community or urban areas?
Now, look at it from our rice production. You know that Gambia consumes about 135,000 tons of rice a year.
Right.
Now, we produce about 35, but the highest ever was 46,000 tons we produced in the country. That means we are not even, we just passed
Which year
quarter.
was this, do you remember?
Like the last, it was in 2016.
2016.
This figure was in 2016. Okay. We consume about 135,000 tons and produced in 2016 about 46,000 tons of rice.
Wow.
So you see the gap, the production and the consumption gap. Yeah. It's so huge that we've little past the quarter.
So what is the way forward?
And you've seen, you know, in Jahal Pachar, we are told we have the capacity to even produce more.
The hectares are large.
Yeah, not only that, but we have fresh water and we have in those areas. But how much money goes into agriculture every year and how much input do we have? Let me tell you that IFAD, according to them, they did an assessment of their investments in Gambia in 2015, and they said IFAD alone has invested over $2 billion in Gambia's agriculture. And this does not go to what EU has invested in Gambia's agriculture and what Gambia itself has invested in Gambian agriculture. But why you see mostly in Gambian agriculture, you see more cars than output. Every project that comes with its brand of cars.
Right.
You go to agriculture ministry and stand there, you literally know every project in that office because of the cars you see, every car branded with X, Y, and Z. So you see the priority in this country with regards to agricultural development, it's hugely misplaced. I mean, how much does the president even talks to farmers about agricultural development?
That is the irony. I think you've mentioned some research that have indicated that agriculture may be declining, but I think the GBOS's this year's summary statistics have also suggested that agriculture's contribution to the GDP has been declining for the past 10 years, right? And if this is the case and we continue to see agriculture being the backbone of our economy, then there's a huge problem there. There's a huge difference between what the agriculture stands for as far as our economic development is concerned, and our commitment to making it a lucrative
And that
industry.
is the problem, because if you see that means the government is having a problem.
Yeah.
If you have a problem and you don't even know you have a problem, you have a bigger problem.
Of course.
Because agriculture is declining and you're still stuck in the past telling people it employs 70% when it actually employed 31%.
Yeah.
So
the first problem with our agricultural sector is the lack of research to begin with. It's the lack of research. I'm not an agriculturist. I don't know anything about rain patterns, but my observation have given me that there is a lack of understanding of the rain patterns changing at a drastic level that the farmers may not necessarily understand. Because if you are used to starting farming in May and rains have started now coming in August, I think somebody need to make research and understanding that farming do not necessarily start in June now. It starts in August.
What would be your recommendation to the government?
My recommendation would be to invest in research.
Invest in research.
Invest in agricultural research to understand our rain patterns, to understand how climate change and other factors is affecting our agricultural industries and how are we going to respond to them.
Right.
My other recommendation is that currently the labor capacity we have in agriculture are aging. If you go to the rural areas, the people you find employed in agriculture are old men and old women.
Right.
Like he said, migration has affected our labor dynamics in that field. All the young people are here. But majority of those young people who are also here are unemployed.
Right.
So here is an opportunity for the government to now invest in youth employment with regards to agriculture.
So now, you just made a very vital point, that is our youngsters migrating from the rural to the urban areas. And of recent, I've also observed that there are a few young people that are quite, that have invested their times in agriculture. And not only that, they've been pushing to make sure that they achieve a successful career in agricultural practices. What do you think, Mustafa, that the government need to do to alleviate these youngsters?
Now, here is what government can do. One, let's not also forget that donors have a stake in this, because Gambia's emission rate is just about 0.001%.
Okay.
In terms of the emission rate, like the discharge of, like the emission rate that causes climate change. And, which causes erratic rainfall and things like that. It's 0.001%. It's like nothing. But then again, so the donors, people, bigger countries who are responsible for this climate change should take a responsibility and make sure they play a part in helping the LDCs, the least developed countries, to adapt to climate change. Because Nima was talking about research. One thing government can do is to have a good understanding of the rainfall pattern, how it has been over the year, and help farmers to adapt.
Right.
Now there are crops that grow within a particular period to a particular period. Like for instance, the watermelon, for instance. Watermelon thrives very much on
a dry season.
Yeah. Very much after the rain, when it's not raining too much. But you have crops that would need too much water. You have crops that will do well when you cultivate them somewhere around midway into the rainy season. You have to understand the rainfall pattern to be able to adapt to that. That's one thing. Now another thing is for Gambia government to also invest in all year round farming, which is to utilize the underground water. We know there is a pilot project that the French are currently undertaking in CRR, and that pilot project will, according to President Barrow in his State of the Nation address, will inform government policy with regards to plans to use underground water for agricultural activity. That's going to be a welcome development, because that would mean we can do farming now all year round. Farming is just a 3-year thing here in this country. So, but also farmers can have cooperatives. We used to have cooperatives here. Farmers need to have a trade union in this country. What is happening here is slavery. Farmers go out, do their work, and when they come, government tells us how much they're going to buy their groundnut. That is not trade, because trade is one's ability to establish price for your goods and sell it. But that is not happening here.
So far, are you guys aware of any sensitization programs that have been going on in terms of agricultural practices? Because I feel that part of the reason why we have limited agriculturists in this country is because they are not sensitized on the benefits. Do you have any knowledge of this? Either of you can answer.
In the past years, we have agricultural extension workers under NARI, and to a relative level, they used to be working effectively. In the current time, so I am not aware of how effectively they are working. I don't know if they still exist. If they still exist, there is very little manifestation out there to show that they are in existence. But I think that's something that needs to be brought back also, because those are the technical experts as far as agriculture is concerned. And
it's gone down significantly, but they still exist. They're at SAPO. In fact, I met one lam in Jawara when I went to Njobeng, and we spoke at length about agricultural activity in that area. I mean, you've seen so many people yet doing so much work. It still exists, but like he said, it died at some point. Now government is trying to put some energy into reviving it, but at some point it died.
Okay, now we're still on the agricultural talk because it's we're very interested in this because it has to do with agricultural failure, you know, and then we are prone to actually going hungry for some time, which we hope.
I think something is wrong with that.
Okay.
Something is wrong with that analogy, and I still don't understand why that has been the foundation for the alert that has been made. I still question how many of those people, even those employing in agriculture, how many of them are dependent on their own labor, right?
Very true.
To call a failure in that sector a general problem in the Gambia, it's...
I don't know. According to IRD, Gambia has one of the finest cashew in the sub-region. And I don't know if the government is doing anything to make sure that, be it the government or stakeholders, if they're doing anything to take up these practices proper. Hence, our groundnut seem to be failing us in the international shelf market.
Well, you may know that cashew, much of the cashew that leaves the shores of the Gambia actually does not come from Gambia. Gambia does a lot of transit trade when it comes to cashew. It mostly comes from Guinea-Bissau and comes
Senegal.
through Gambia and then passes. Well, we do have cashew, of course, but not in a very large scale.
Yeah, but I think the government should invest more in that.
If we're speaking about food security, we want to grow food that is stable for us, that we can actually eat. I think cashew have become a commercial food for the majority of people who are employed in it. And being such, it's important for trade, but is it important for alleviating food security? I don't think so.
Okay.
So maybe we may want to also look at the Faraba Commission before we... I don't know how much time we have for the news review sections, but the Faraba Commission report was presented to the President. It was done. We followed it, and then the report is now compiled and it's been presented to the Presidency, and the President admitted that he was going to implement the outcome of the report to the letter. I don't know. I mean, we know there are so many complex forces within this thing. I mean, you have the police there, you have some very powerful people connected to some people in Faraba. I mean, a lot of people say, well...
And the indigenous people as well in that area.
I think I'm one of the people who have been keenly looking forward to that commission coming out, but unfortunately I haven't gotten the chance to read the content.
The content will be exposed. It's not yet published, but...
So what has been said about, what do we know about it?
What we know so far is that the President, the Commissioner, as Emmanuel Juf told us, has recommended prosecution of certain people, even though Emmanuel would not say who, because that should be up to the Presidency to say. Of course. And then, so it's been reviewed.
But I think the report has to recommend who?
The prosecution of certain people. So Emmanuel would not say who those people are. But it's with the President and the Justice Ministry, as we were told, is currently reviewing it, and the people who are culpable will eventually face justice. So, but if you look at the incidents leading up to Faraba, the events leading up to Faraba incident, you probably see it plethora perhaps of recklessness, I mean, leading up to the incident. I mean, the issue of the report by the National Assembly Committee on Environment.
Yeah, like I said, it's going to be hard for me to comment on something that I don't know its content, but based on the information we have so far, I think prosecuting for me is scapegoating certain people. Because, like you said, I take this to be a failure on the government's part.
Right.
This is not an incident that just happened overnight. It has been there growing gradually until it erupted into that magnitude.
Of course.
So if that is the case also, you understand the people who were involved, the citizens of Faraba who presumably were fighting for their rights, fighting over their environment, and you have the security who responded because that is what they're supposed to do as well. So if there is a clash between those two individuals or those two groups of people and there are casualties, I think we should be able to deal with that in a more mature, sensible way rather than just prosecuting.
What do you think? Don't you think probably that the government, I mean, should prosecute people? I mean, if, regardless of who they come from. I mean, even if they are tough people in government. I mean, we know that the command may have come from paramilitary to shoot, even though no one seems to know where the command comes from.
It may come from the top. It may not necessarily also come from it. It may also be that the police
a judgment call.
Yeah,
as they say.
They responded
based on the situation.
Based on the situation. That may also be the case.
But how about if
for their own survival? Because if it's a mob attack, you want to protect yourself. I'm not saying that is the case, but that is a possibility. So if that is the case, then like I said, you can prosecute because there are people who will be calling for prosecution, especially the families of the victims, and that will make sense from their perspective. Of course. But for general decorum, moving forward from this, because there may also be instances. There are land issues everywhere. There are natural resources issues everywhere, especially around the combos. I think this would set a precedence for how we can move forward from here. So that being the case, I don't have the best alternative to prosecution, but I think we need to really reconsider. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mustafa Dabo, for that smart review of both the newspaper review and as well the Fatou website review. Thank you very much, Mustafa Dabo. Now to you, Nimasata, what has been trending on social media? So I know it has been a long week, but then several things have been going on over the week. So tell us.
It has been a long week, and compared to the previous weeks where we have very hot issues being discussed on social media, like Mustafa said, this time has been really very uneventful. And I don't know if that is something good or if it is bad, because usually what we respond to is what government has done badly. So if we are not getting so much of that, I think that should be a good thing. But also talking about issues, especially debating on them as hotly as we've been doing, is also a good thing. So what has been trending? What has been trending is finally, we have been informed that we can now have our ID cards and we can feel Gambian. I think there is a Western company called Semlex who has been awarded a contract to now start issuing passports and ID cards and so on and so forth. And the price have seemingly increased from what we have known it to be, from 250 to 450.
Right.
And there are people saying ordinary Gambians may not be able to afford this. And I think this is also coming from the place of why the contract is being awarded to a foreign company rather than a local company. And the prices may have hijacked that level because of that dynamic. And so there is that debate. My personal take on this is that perhaps the increase in the price of ID card may come from inflation. It has been how many years? Since 2016, I think. It has been 2 years already. So during that period, it may happen. A lot of prices have increased also. So it may happen that this is a reasonable price. It may not be the case. So what do you guys think?
Well, if you ask me, I think it's absurd.
Yeah.
The UN, if you look at the UN statistics on poverty, the level of poverty in this country, it's 48%, 48.6% of Gambians live below $1 a day.
True.
If you live below $1 a day, definitely you can't even have. That means you don't have up to $50 a day. If you don't have up to $50 a day, how much can you eat and how much can you save to accumulate to access your own national document? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, Nimasata, based on the topic that you have just discussed, that's the SEMLEX and the Gambian immigration issue in ID cards. One of the key advocates we have in the Gambia made mention that it would have been preferable that the government gives the identity cards for free rather than charging the masses because of the tax that the people of the Gambia pays. What do you make of this?
So here is two things to look at. The first thing to look at is that national identity cards is a right for every citizen.
Right.
We must have it because this is how we feel as a citizen. Everywhere you go, whether it's within the country or outside the country, this is what you present to show where you come from and where you belong. Therefore, that should be accessible to everyone. People should not be denied ID card because they cannot afford it. And I saw from maybe the same person where he mentioned that since we are paying taxes, the government owes us a responsibility to issue us national identity cards for free. And this would make sense from that perspective. But also, I think the major problem here is the fact that we are not able to produce this on our own, or we are not able to use a local government to do this at a discount price. The fact that we have within the equation a foreign company who is in business, a private company, and who needs to be paid their services. Therefore, the government now transfer that responsibility to the people.
So now, this is like, it's a heated topic on social media. I would like to ask you if you think we do not have legible Gambians that are similarly in the same business to take up such contract.
There have been this controversy with a particular individual who had passed on. May his soul rest in peace. There have been a controversy that he was part of, I think, the number of companies who were called to tender to be awarded this contract, and it happens that SEMLEX has been given it. So based on that information, then we know that there may be competent individuals within the Gambia who can do the same job as SEMLEX is doing. I don't know why SEMLEX has been awarded instead of this particular individual who was a Gambian who had the same capacity as SEMLEX may have. So I cannot tell why the government would choose a foreign company to do the same thing.
And moreover, I think we were also aware that they had a criminal case somewhere, Mustafa.
Yeah. SEMLEX has been reportedly involved in a lot of criminal activities.
Yeah.
We've seen Reuters particularly. SEMLEX said Reuters is obsessed with them and that somehow Reuters has an agenda. They've said that. But Reuters has reported repeatedly on SEMLEX involvement in corrupt activities elsewhere in Africa, where they compromised even national documents and involved in selling them. But let's also look at this issue. It's a very complex one. SEMLEX and Pristine. SEMLEX has had their contract before the change of the regime. Now, Jammeh terminated the contract reportedly against a legal advice of his attorney general. Now, you know that when you have an existing contract, you can terminate it legally. It comes with a cost.
Of course.
You will remember that Gambia has terminated the contract of Kandeh Minerals. A Kandeh Mineral, which was mining in the Congo South, took Gambia to court and they won a damage of about $23 million. That was a huge lot of money that Gambia government inherited from the past. And so the Gambia government was scared. There was a legal dilemma. Do we continue upholding the decision that Jammeh made and risk going to court with SEMLEX when they hold a contract, and go with SEMLEX? Now, one thing that the Justice Ministry did was they asked SEMLEX to now apply, like bid. They put out a bid out there and asked SEMLEX to now apply Now the trap was that if Semlex applied, their claim of holding a valid contract document would have perhaps been nullified by their own action, because if they take you to court now, you can tell them, if you believe you had a valid contract document, why did you apply?
Yeah.
That is the technique that the Justice Ministry did. Semlex did not fall for it. They refused to apply. So now, of course, I know there are so much influence peddling around this issue online. I mean, but a lot of those people also talking are not also looking at the complex nature that government finds itself in. You understand? Because you have to also be fair and look at the critical nature of the issue at hand here. You know, it's not just about having an interest in something.
We cannot blame those people. It boils down to lack of information. How many of us know about this? The complexities that are involved here. I think the few people. And this will be because the government is not forthcoming with this information. I know that this has been a heated debate, but I haven't heard from the side of the government explaining why Semlex are not pristine or other local.
So, you know, Bata Bedu actually explained it in the National Assembly. So he explained that I didn't just stop at that. I asked other people. In fact, a former minister who was one time in connection with Semlex, we had some discussion with some people, and everything they tell you points at this. Of course, we know about the credibility issue surrounding the Semlex saga, but we also know the complex situation within which the government finds itself in. So do you risk the legal suit?
Yeah, but another thing we need, besides the legalities of things, which make sense from what you've just explained, another thing I think we should be worried about is where our database is being kept and how secured are they. Because that should be worrying for us.
Very true.
Yeah.
What else is trending?
So that has been trending. Another thing that has been trending at this which has been very hot is the 230 million Gambian dollars that has been incurred as a expenditure for travel for the president and some of the ministers and the president's family. So I think what majority of the Gambians are concerned with is how poorly some of our sectors are doing, like health, like education, and so on and so forth, and we can afford to spend such amount of money on mere traveling.
Of course.
And another thing that corresponds to that is what are they bringing in as a result of their travel? Because if you're not seeing a corresponding effect here, which is positive for us, then traveling is a waste of money.
But then some will argue that most of this traveling that they make is to...
I'm just going to cut you right there, because that's something that we are going to have a prolonged discussion around when we have our guests. So I'm just going to mention that, and when he comes back, we can discuss around that. Other than that, it's been a pretty good week, and we hope that it continues that way. The government doesn't have to give us cause to continue to debate, but we can continue to keep them accountable and make sure that they bring to us this information. I think this is something that we should commend our government officials for, because the only reason why we can be aware of these things and we can debate around them to provide what our opinions are is when this information are brought to us. And it's been a pretty good year so far.
Thank you very much, Nimasata, for that insightful information. Now we'll take you through the Entrepreneur of the Week. And of course, I'm sure our viewers know what it's about, but I will still tell you, every edition of the program will profile a Gambian who is doing very well in the business that they've set up to creating job employment. And of course, I love to say that they add up to the GDP of the country. In this edition, we meet a young Gambian who is making waves in the agricultural industry, as we were mentioning earlier on.
Yeah.
And let's take a watch of Mr. George Jata.
Man may George Santa Jata borom Evergreen Garden amuko. Man for time boobu noonu maçon laa dee liggéey nekkuma woon comme professionnel maçon am dee liggéey laboris so ma dem ba gis ne liggéey bi nii dafa métti time bu ma ko starté dafa late pour ma nit mu war a mun métier bi so loolu laa gis ñu ma doon liggéey ma xam ne lii du mun a dem from suma future ma toon ma xalaat a gis ne agriculture tam soo ko waree def mun na laa njëriñ si kanam business bi nu ma ko starté mooy time ma doon liggéey dañ ma doon fay 150 a day so 150 boobu noonu laa dajale $100 bi moom su ma ñëwee damaa teg $100 bi loolu laa ko dajale ba mut 5000 garden bi bu ma ko doon starté ma ko starté $5000 waaw 5000 laa ko starté si kakumba laa ko starté waaw buñ demee bu ma jiyee kakumba jaay ko kakumba bu mutee ma jaay ko waaw kakumba bu mutee ma jaay ko bu ma ko jaayee ma am foofu noonu profit am naa foofu noonu tuuti waaw moo laa starté di expand garden bi si laa jënd i xooxi tamaate ak kaani ak i xooxi jaatu waaw may nursery waaw noonu la garden bi ñëwee nag ba léegi moom sant yàlla loolu bu ma starté time boobu noonu xam nga pour nga gis fii nii comme waxambaane comme man di liggéey façon liggéey dafa métti de neexut sax pour nga jënd sa morom yi gardi na bàyyee sometimes su may pousse su ma yóbbu su comme tamaate client yi suñu ñëwee fii ne dama ko dee bëgg a puusal gars yi ba si tali bi su ma ko pousse sax foog ma muur ko waaw if not su ma romb booy dañ may ree xam nga jaaykati tamaate bi gandi da bi kakumbay noonu lañ ñu fii nii sax xam nga amoon na difficultés yu bëri fii nii nag waa ak amoon na time su ma dama amoon fii nii tamaate full tool bi yëpp tamaate after ma am pets attaque yëpp mu nekk sax tamaate bi yaaw almost lu yaaw mut na $80,000 sant yàlla bu ma joinee jiin bu ma nekkee jiin même soo ñuy dem training nii on daan neema waaye jiin ñoo ñu dee boole foofu noonu ak gars soo ñu ñëw woon comme soo amee i pets attaque yi nii dañ dee dem jàngal loolu yëpp foofu noonu am naa fa expérience tuuti soo da nga gis ne yooyu noonu baram bu dee am dama dee mun a xam nan lay def ma aar comme sax yi bu mun a téye suma waaw comme si ak yooyu waaw bu ma starté man kenn la woon after ma oo suma boy bi ñu ñëw ñu join mu nekk ñun ñaar so léegi bu joobi bee si kanam ñoo xam ne léegi moom liggéey bi dinañu ëpp doole after dañ join daal léegi nekkaatut garden bi comme man kenn dama ko def léegi ñu nekk ñun ñaar so after ñoo xam ne liggéey bi dinañu ëpp doole so ñu employé ñaari nit waaw bu ñu employé ñaari nit so after am nga jiin ñooñu inspire tam ñu ubbi suñ Facebook page bu ñu ubbee suñ Facebook page so gaa ñu gis suñ liggéey ni so jiin ñu dugalante suma boy bi moom demoon na Burkina sax dem jàngal yi fan affaire yi agriculture waaw so bu mu ñëwee am na fa expérience bu baax so bu mu ñëwee mu séedoo ko ak ñun so suñu garden bi gën a dem soo bàyyee xel poultry bii nii ñun ñoo ko bil ak xaalis si garden bi so moom leen bëgg a jeexale ni because léegi xam na next 2 weeks suñ ganaar yi dañ war a ñëw sax waaw bu ñu demee garden bi because ñu ne poultry soo ko amee da nga dee dimbale sa bopp tam si jënda maño yi ak yooyu because puupi ganaar yooyu noonu soo ko usee maño boobu moo gën a baax sax soo ko usee si garden bi daf day gën a gaawloo li fi ne fii nii nag waaw market vendors yi ñoo leen nekk suma kii la ñoom ñoo ñëw fii nag ñoo leen ñëw jënd fii nii so waaw aw ma fixe customer rek waaw comme su ñoree nii ama de alaat gaay waaw ñu ñëw sometimes moom daf dee nekk fii xëccoo sax ñeneen ni suñ ñëwee dundee mën a am suñ ñëwee sax dañoo tëj suñ bopp ak waaw juróomi at sax mun naa la wax fii balaa ñuy wane ñaari at dama bëgg a àdduna bi yëpp suñ ma déggut sax waaye Afrique yëpp dinañ ma dégg waaw because bëggu ñoo am fii nii waaw dem bëgg a créer job bëggu ñoo toog fii di tam soo ko gisee fii nii am na suñu raka yu dee ñëw fii dañ dee ñëw ñu toog fii nii ñoom tam dañ dee bëgg a ñëw liggéey ak ñun waaye suñu liggéey ak ñun duñ mun a fay gaay so dañ bëgg a tam suñu amee fu ñoo expand suñu garden bi waaw poultry bi tam ñu am fu ñu ko expandé dañoo mën a employé nit yu bëri doo mën a oo sa bopp entrepreneur nekk loo di créer job entrepreneur life entrepreneur da nga war a créer job so job lañ bëgg a créer su next 5 years suñ mënee créer more than 500 jobs sax waaw pour nit yi ñun tam loolu lañ bëgg suñ fi nekkul sax suñ tur mu nekk fii ñii ñoo defoon lii ok man lu ma am pour wax gars yi mooy job bi nii soo fa duggee doo rëccu so waaw moo tax buñ dee toog si biti wala ñuy toog si saison yi di ataaya ñu ne liggéey amut fii nii liggéey mu ngi am fii nii soo xoolee si biir da ngaa gis liggéey nit foog nga xool si doo mën a toog noonu liggéey mu fekk la foofu la yaa war a créer sa bopp a job ñun toogoon nañ noonu waaye after buñ duggee si garden bi ñun gis nañ lu fa nekk suñ morom yi moom ñu nekk fii nii ñoom dañ dee gis nañ ko si ñun temps boobu loolu looy soona di dem di ñaanantu ak yooyu noonu yëpp léegi mu nga ko defal sa bopp mun ngaa fajal ñeneen ni seen soxla even saako maa la sax léegi doo mën a am problème si kër bi kii du dee wàcce lii amul njëriñ ak yooyu noonu so lu ma wax gars yi moom ñu try ñu dugga si agriculture moo mën a yóbbu dëkk bi si kanam agriculture mooy future bi waaw.
Thank you very much. kontaan nañ trop si kàddu yi rafet na.
Now that I have saved some money to build my dream home, I'm really confused about which estate company to approach. My friend had a bad experience with a particular estate agency after completing his payment and could not even get his title deed. This is serious.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Thank you.
My name is Oli. I'm from Kandeh Investments.
Understood.
Thank you.
You know, I must say you came at a very right time.
Really?
I was thinking about houses.
Great.
What can your company offer me?
EJ Investments can offer you a lot. We're unique in the market.
Okay.
We own our properties and we ensure that they're developed with modern technologies. They're affordable and they are strategic locations. We don't just sell pieces of land, but we create settlements.
What makes your company different from others?
We're different from all real estate companies in the Gambia because what we have to offer is affordability, safety, and security. We ensure that you get a legal contract from when you pay your deposit, and within 4 weeks of paying your final settlement, we make sure you receive your title deed.
4 weeks?
4 weeks.
That's interesting.
Yes. Now tell me, what real estate serves your needs?
It's absolutely EJ Investment and Real Estate Agency.
Welcome back after that showing the entrepreneur of the week, and of course, Mr. George Jata is doing very well in the agriculture sector, and we will hope that he'll be part of those award-winning agriculturists we'll have in the Gambia in the subsequent awards to come, that is, if any arises. And of course, one of my most exciting part of the sessions of the show, which is the special guest. Today, we'll be talking about the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs. This week told lawmakers that the government spent about $230 million on travels. This has brought so much talk on both social media and on the streets as well. Our guest today is Mr. Demba, a lecturer at the University of the Gambia. Demba is also the Gambia Press Union Director of Training for Media Academy, and as well, Demba is also a media practitioner. So he has a lot of profile attached to his shoulders. Welcome, Mr. Demba.
Thank you. Yeah.
Of course, our main reason for having you today is to talk about the $230 million that the Minister of Finance has brought to the National Assembly's notice that these are the amounts that they had spent for traveling.
Yeah.
So, how would you analyze this from your perspective?
Thank you very much for having me, Joy. And I think it's a very important conversation in the public domain for a lot of reasons. One is that for the first time in the history of the Gambia, we see a lot of people, both online and offline, like you mentioned, talk about public expenditure. And to be honest, that's a very welcome thing. In terms of what I think of government expenditure, I think government expenditure has two ultimate objectives. Primarily is to increase macroeconomic growth. In real terms, that really means promoting socioeconomic development, service delivery basically for the average person in the street. The other component is also sort of the effectiveness or sort of access and transparency, and efficiency of, public finances. The former is the most important component, and so in terms of, putting the 250 million also to that test, we would say there is a lot of confusion as to what actually that this $250 million expenditure, especially on travel, has actually brought to the Gambian people, to the average person in the street, in terms of what they expect from government service delivery.
Okay, so based on this, service delivery, of course, it's very important in the macro environment. Don't you think, this was the question I had wanted to ask Nyima Sata before she halted me, that we have someone that would answer this question, so I'm posting it to you now. Don't you think that part of the traveling that most of these government officials do is to actually go out there and market the country, and through the marketing process that could also yield enough to replace this much that has been spent?
That's right. Notwithstanding, there are two very important effects of government expenditure, especially when you talk about increase in government expenditure. And I hope that's something we're going to talk about later on, but that's something that we've observed in terms of comparison from last year or previous years. We've seen an increase in government expenditure. And an increase in government expenditure has short-term and long-term effect on the economy. On the average person, you and I, one of those is increase in taxes. And initially, you guys were talking about the ID card fee moving from $250 to $450. So that's just one direct effect of increase in public expenditure. And so it's fundamentally important there for that. When we talk about service delivery, we sort of think of it in terms of the value for money. If we spend 250 million on travel or on anything, so to speak, not just travel, on anything, the average person in the street, there should be some sort of value for that money, because government source of money is mostly taxes, especially in the Gambia. It's a tax-based economy. We keep saying that, but what that really means is that you and I, the average person, are financing government activities. So if we are spending money, we should spend in respect of the value for money, sort of realizing the purpose for the money. And there have been a lot of reporting, the media reporting and other issues in terms of what has happened from travels, whether it's trips to China, whether it's the Brussels conference, and all other travel engagements by the administration. But the general feeling of the public is that we haven't seen the real value for money, especially for 250 million.
230 million.
Sorry, 230 million. Actually, that figure is said to be a bit below the actual expenditure, but because that's what the figure we're given by the minister, we'll go by that. Yes.
Yeah, so speaking about value for money, and I like that term very well, there have been, especially, we try to reveal this as to what is happening on social media, what the data has generated out there. So there are people who are outraged about the amount, but there are also people saying we should trade this with caution, because we know about what is being spent, but what do we know about what is being brought to the country as a direct correspondence to the expenditure? So what do we know about that?
Yeah, so a few things we know. We know the road project that is being built by China in the Gambia, two actually road projects. We also know the most recent one, that is the, I forgot the term that the president used, but it's almost about 30 million Chinese Chinese yuan worth of money that the Gambia government got from the most recent trip to China in the China-Africa conference. Also, we know that there was a donor pledge of about 1.5 billion US dollars from the Brussels conference. But generally, I think the sentiment that we haven't got the real value for money is actually true. And of course, this is for me, it's just a feeling, but there are also a lot of evidence that prove that we haven't got the real value for money as far as government expenditure is concerned, and that points to a lack of fiscal discipline as far as this government is concerned. And in the words of the former finance minister when he was presenting the 2018 budget late last year rather, he talked about the need for financial discipline. But 8 months into the year, 18 months into the new administration, we still see a lot of fiscal indiscipline. And so that brings into question their commitment to some of these policy issues that they talk about, that we want to do this, we want to do that, government is trying this, government is trying that. So it's fundamentally a difficult question to answer because, personally, I don't have any precise reference to point at, but I think, the fact that people feel like there's not been real value for money, and the fact that we as a public, and I'm sure I'm a journalist, Mustafa is also a journalist, and talk about that more, but the public's general feeling is that there hasn't been real value for the money that government is.
Yeah, and a follow-up question to that is it enough for us to suggest that if we're receiving so much money and grant as a result of our travel, it's still okay to spend this much amount on travel? Because the way I understand it is that the government, starting from the Barrow himself as the president, have made a number of travels that we could not quantify at this point, and which we have been questioning since the beginning. What is the point of these many travels? And we also know there's a cultural travel in this country where people go to attend events, because I've been told by a government official who told me he was invited to a particular event in Ghana, and he was there, he was questioning himself, why am I here? I have no business in this gathering here. And we have also had information, although these are not based on real evidence, but majority of these things that go around, there's a certain level of truth to them, that government officials lobby for conferences, to attend conferences where they necessarily do not have any business there, so that they can have access to per diem and so on and so forth. So besides that point, my first question would be, is it okay to say, as long as we are getting something from the outside world, it's enough justification to spend this much money on travel? That's one. My second question is, how much of what we get goes to the productive sector? For example, in agricultural development, in tourism development, in service delivery, all of which is the backbone of both our social and our economic standing. How much of what we get as a result of the travel gets to those sectors?
Yeah, so that's an important question, and I think I'll connect that to what I was saying earlier in terms of the effects of increasing government expenditure. There's a principle called drowning out, and what that really means is that when government increases expenditure, the private sector will decrease expenditure. And when government increases, because government, chunk of government money comes from taxes, the more you spend those taxes, and you spend them on service delivery, of course, which is a good thing, but you also reducing the expenditure from the level of the private sector. And that has the potential to affect the economic performance of a particular country.
In a negative or a positive way?
In a negative way, obviously.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't make that very clear, probably. In a negative way. So, therefore, in terms of government expenditure, it's important to invest in the productive sectors, like you alluded to earlier on. In the case of the Gambia, the productive sector is agriculture. We know tourism is also very productive, but also in terms of social services. It's unfortunate.
Education, especially.
It's unfortunate that if you go to the service sector, the social services, whether it's education or health, the public service delivery institutions leave a lot to be desired for. Most of us don't want our kids to go to public schools. Most of us don't want our kids to go to public hospitals, which is really unfortunate, despite the fact that we pay so much tax. So those are the issues, and I think therefore the conversation should be on, it should not be, yes, it's important that we want to limit government expenditure, but it's also important that we want to make sure that government expenditure is in line with government objectives or development objectives of the country, and that is very, very key. And I think that is partly missing in the general discussion so far. Most of the outrage has been oh, 230 million on travel. Yes, that could be reasonable, but it should be in line with government development plans and so on and so on, which is fundamentally important.
One of the first travels that President Barrow made wasn't, I think the first one ever, when he came to power, was to Congo. I mean, a lot of us said, well, this is absurd. What was he doing there? Doesn't that sort of define how Gambia government's travel priorities are? I mean, in a way.
That might not define their priorities, but it sort of gives you an insight into the wrong priorities, or sort of misplaced priorities in terms of travel opportunities for government. I mean, for God, no, I mean, we never knew what exactly Barrow was doing in Congo. The second thing is the size of government delegations. Of course, last year's UN General Assembly, a lot of criticism came about as a result of the size of government delegation and the relevance of those people on government delegation. We've seen that happen in the Brussels conference. We've seen that happen in terms of trips to China. And today, Barrow left for another
Saudi Arabia as well.
UN General Assembly left today.
Yeah, and then you have a lot of people going with the president, some of whom do not necessarily are not very, very essential or key in terms of the Gambia government development policies. Or their dreams or their agenda for development. You tend to question, why are they there? What are they doing there? And so on and so forth.
One thing Barrow's argument is, I mean, he's responding to that many times, and even his government officials, was that they go because Gambia is emerging out of dictatorship, which was largely, Gambia was an isolationist, in a way, and then they are now trying to go out there on an aggressive diplomatic campaign to sort of sell the Kandeh. I mean, is that enough justification?
It's a good justification, but it's not even reasonable to put that forward in the sense that the people that you're bringing are not actually helping put Gambia out there. I would have loved to see the media, for example, have a space in terms of government delegations, public and private media. But unfortunately, I mean, I stand to be corrected, but I have not seen, especially the private media, given an opportunity to travel with government.
Right.
We all know how important the media is. I mean, some will argue that government cannot finance private media trips to do their job. But this is also a third world country, and we see the government do that in other countries. But, we can have sort of a system where private media can contribute to, some sort of, some sort of consortium funds, some sort of, fundraisers that they can send one or two from the private sector, private media, to be part of government delegations, so that's also important in terms of selling the Gambia. If you are a journalist in New York or in Brussels or in Shanghai or Hong Kong, you have probably a larger following and a larger opportunity to sell the Gambia abroad and also bring those countries back to the Gambia to sell to a larger public than if you have, say, for instance, a chairperson of a youth movement or an uncle or a friend of a government minister or office of the president or a friend to the first lady or whatever, And these are unfortunate circumstances, but these are the realities.
Yeah, my concern with that is selling the Gambia. What are we actually selling? Is that a product that we have packaged as the Gambian brand to be sold to the outside world? Is it enough to just visit a particular country and say, I'm selling a country? You have to have a product. You have to have a narrative around that product where even without you necessarily visiting those countries, people see it through these channels that you've mentioned and other avenues that are available to us. Other than that, if that is absent, as I am sure it is absent, visiting a country doesn't necessarily sell another country.
May I ask this question, because it's very relevant with regards to what Barrow's promises were. When he came, we all know the economic outlook of this country was very serious. I mean, in fact, in 2015, IMF has put out a press release to say Gambia's economy was at a crossroad. So you would see that the public debt at the time, 2016 end, was about 120%. But now we are at 136%. Barrow claimed he was going to curtail public expenditure, but in fact, in 2 years, less than 2 years, he has added 16% onto it. Of course, I have spoken to a finance official who told me, well, we've had an existing projects and somehow we've got to incur some more debt. And what do you think? You think this is a symptom of fiscal indiscipline?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a symptom of fiscal indiscipline, but also it comes from the effects of the previous policy. For the next, years or so, we'll have to, deal with that. But the challenge also is that how well are we managing those, externalities as a result of decisions made in the previous government. And that's where the fiscal indiscipline comes into play, because we haven't been very pragmatic and straightforward. It's true that government has made series of commitments, but the truth is it's not enough to make commitments. We need to move from commitment to action. We need to be seen to be doing something, not just saying, oh, we are committed to fiscal discipline, we are committed to reducing public expenditure, we are committed to this, we are committed. You need to be seen to be doing that. And that's fundamentally important for the economy, but it's also important for the public. It's also important for your development partners. There are a lot of issues, a lot of deadlines, actually, a lot of priorities that have been set by the development partners. One of those issues is government policy or vehicle policy. You understand? It's which is a heated debate, but it's a fundamentally important issue which has a component of public finance. So those are issues that I do hope that government will move.
But why do you think the vehicle policy didn't work? I mean, we all know it's also a part of the same plans by government to curtail public expenditure. But somehow, 1 year down the line, it's dying.
Yeah, so generally, I think that's one of the major problems that the Barrow administration has, this lack of the wherewithal to make tough decisions. And governance requires making difficult decisions, sometimes tough decisions, sometimes unpalatable decisions.
Right.
And in the case of the vehicle policy, unpalatable decisions. And unfortunately, what we see over and over in the Barrow administration is that tendency to tend to satisfy everybody, which is a very good thing, but it's a very difficult, if not impossible thing to do. And so it's well-intentioned from the side of the government, but is it feasible and is it possible for government to satisfy everybody and get things going? It's not. And so it's important, therefore, that we make the tough decisions, and the difficult decisions as long as they are the right decisions. And sometimes we cannot get it right until we try. Then we are sure that, well, maybe it's the wrong decision, but we did it with good faith, and then we move on. We make mistakes and correct those mistakes and move on. But being indecisive is not good for administration. It's not even good for the economy, because uncertainty does not help in terms of economic growth. Yes,
just yesterday, the foreign affairs minister was in Kazakhstan. I mean, we are talking about traveling. Kazakhstan, many would tell you perhaps it's not a priority for a visit of a government official.
Yeah, I mean, the approach of the foreign ministry is that they are going sort of very aggressive in terms of trying to sell and market the Gambia out there, which is a good thing. But again, I think we need to be strategic and in terms of also in line with the idea of fiscal discipline. Kazakhstan is going to be at the UN General Assembly. Why would you travel all the way to Kazakhstan? Why not just target them at the UN General Assembly and meet them there? Or target them somewhere through their embassies or missions abroad where you have our missions. And, that's the purpose of, having embassies and so on and so forth. Those are fundamentally important. And if it adds up to the principle of saying, okay, this is our priorities and these are the strategies that we're taking to ensure that we deliver on the promises of the
it's good that you mentioned the purpose of embassies. It has also been another debate that the Gambia government or the Gambia as a country is such a small country to have embassies in so many places that are even closer to each other, that it would be enough to have just one ambassador in one area of, for example, Europe, or in one area of America that covers a lot of other areas there. But it happens that we have so many embassies and yet we are traveling so much.
Yeah, so it's a contradiction, and then I think I was at a workshop where they questioning government officials were actually questioning the logic behind having multiple embassies in Europe, for instance, and it has put so much expenditure strain, on government, and to be quite frank, it's not feasible fiscally, financially. When you guys were talking earlier on about the call for support for food insecurity or whatever. How can you be talking about food insecurity of 1.7 million people, and yet you spend so much on travel and make so many unwise economic decisions, and still you're begging for more money? I mean, do you think your donors will take you serious? They won't, and they're watching. Yes, and they won't take you serious.
Gambia is currently under an IMF staff monitored program. In fact, if I get it right from the sources I've got, is that IMF delegations are currently in the country to assess the Gambia. They come time and time to assess the implementation of the programs as well. So do you think, given the kind of expenditure we see from the Gambia government and the priorities where our money goes, you think it's pleasing?
It's not so pleasing, to be honest. But what happens is the IMF missions will come, the World Bank will come, and they will meet government officials, do their work, and make their recommendations, and put cost timelines, and they go back. 3 months later, 6 months later, or 1 year later, the deadline has elapsed, government has not implemented. They have defaulted, and they'll ask for extension. And this has been sort of the trend overall on the Jame, and it's been the trend on the President Barrow.
But then if you look at the international financial institution, if you are giving money to the Gambia, because the people who inherit these debts are the Gambian people. Yes. Now, if you think it's some honesty, or are they some sort of vultures who prey on innocent Africans?
Well, I think we are sort of in a dire situation, and I think this is also part of the academic discussion of whether aid is working for Africa or it's not working for Africa. And there are a lot of arguments. I mean, strong arguments on both sides. But personally, I think concessional loans. You mentioned back in 2015 and 2016 when the Gambian economy was in serious strain, the IMF came in and supported, and that's very laudable. But long-term economic aid grants does not really help much in terms of what researchers have shown. A lot of countries. And the Gambia is a good example. You look at the agricultural subsector. I mean, we receive a lot of funding, grants in aid, whatever, the agricultural sector, but still agriculture is not doing much, and so, yeah.
Yeah, so we don't have enough time. We have to conclude this here, but I just have a final question I want to ask you about trust and honesty, especially as far as our relationship with our government is concerned. We know that when the Barrow government came into power, the first rally, their crying point has been that the former regime hasn't left us any money. We don't have any money at all. And for that reason, the present government have developed a national development plan, which we understand is largely dependent on foreign donor and foreign aid. Also, we know that, for example, when we cry about electricity failures, when we cry about food insecurity, as they have themselves made an alert, we cry about the education system failing, we cry about the health sector failing. All of the response to this is that we have our partners who are willing to help us. But that is besides the point. Now, the point now is, where do we get all the money that we spend on travel if you don't have the same amount of money to address this very dire situation?
Yeah.
What is your take on that?
Generally, it falls back on taxpayers, and unfortunately, that.
Do you think there is some level of honesty here? Are they telling us the truth?
Maybe, maybe not. And if they are telling us the truth, they are not telling us the whole truth. There's need for more transparency. I think the fact that the finance minister went to Parliament and disclosed this is a step in the right direction. We want to see more of that happening. But to be honest, the level of transparency at government is still is in a state that that's not really encouraging so far, and that does not breed trust. And for a government, public service delivery, trust in those institutions and trust in the administration is super important in terms of meeting the expectations of the public.
Thank you very much, Demba, for coming along.
Thank you very much, Mr. Demba. It has been such an insightful analysis from him, and of course, he made very vital points ranging from how embassies should, at least the government should at least cut down the amount of embassies that we have around Europe, and then find a way to synchronize it with other closer countries so we can reduce the amount of expenditure in order to also not increase the amount of the expenditure we have at the moment. There's $230 million and so forth. So I must say we're grateful for this moment with you. Still on the brunch show, we're taking you to a place called the Great Hands Restaurant. It's located at Larikunda, German, where they sell varieties. Let's take a look.
My name is Emeka, and my business name is Great Hands Restaurant. We hear that from the customers, where we cook good food, home food, and people appreciate it. And we have very good environment where people can relax, enjoy their food.
It is quite cozy here. The air conditioner is working 24/7, and the variety of food you have here, you cannot have them anywhere in this country.
When I'm starting to open the restaurant, people ask me how much is my food because of the environment. But I told them it's for everybody, it's for big man and for poor people. So it's affordable for everybody. And something that inspired me, people really appreciate the food. But, from what you hear from people, that encourages us more to do more better. But we love the satisfaction of our customers.
The quality of the food is very, very high, but you eat your satisfaction.
Most of the time, some Gambians will have to go to Nigeria restaurant, and we're trying to look for exactly what people want outside there, and the kind of food people want outside there. And people today, I'm proud of having many of Gambians as my customers. We have Nigeria customers, but Gambians, they are more. They love the food. Yeah, we have something like okra soup, where the Gambians call it spaganja. We have a goosey soup, they call it plasas. So when they come to the restaurant, they say, I want plasas. We know what they want. They want a goosey soup. And there's something that everybody loves so much is about our fried rice. It's one of the best in Gambia. But there's some special food also. That's special. The prices are different. Well, we have okra soup with shrimps. We have vegetable soup with goat meat. We have fried egusi. We have fried fish. We have fried meat. We have fish and yam pepper soup. And we have goat head. Understand? And we have a lot of it. We have fresh fish pepper soup, and we have good pepper soup. Everything is available.
I like the food. As a matter of fact, I even told him to extend this restaurant to another section that we, the people that live in the other side, don't have to drive all the way down here.
And some people come all the way from America, from everywhere. Maybe they come to Gambia, where they have African food. And this is the first place. People have to advise them.
I just recently came and I was searching for a better place to eat fufu. And then my friend pointed this place out. And since then I've been coming over to eat fufu here.
Some time ago, a lady called. He said that we search for the best restaurant in the Gambia, African food. The African restaurant in the Gambia. Your name came first, Great Hands. So I was proud. We don't need much advertisement. When you start to find one, you went outside there and tell the others. this is the best place to be. But I believe that's the best place to be. The Great Hands American Restaurant is the one of the best food in Gambia, one of the best restaurants. That's where you can have the best food. And after that, I don't know any other name.
Emeka's restaurant has been able to, give customers what they need, the way they need it, and at an affordable price.
He wants to make profit, but at the same time, he wants to satisfy his customers. He wants to give the best to his customers, and he wants you to come back again.
Emeka Restaurant is one of the hotspots and restaurants in Gambia.
Welcome back to the brunch. Still reminding you that we have Mr. Demba Kandeh is still in the studio. He's a lecturer at the University of the Gambia and as well the GPU Director of Training for Media Academy, and also he's a media practitioner. So we still have him in the studio here. So welcome on the other half of the show. Thank you. Usually on the brunch, we have a particular segment which is called Who Am I? And this will give our guests the opportunity to know who you are. So we take you up with a surprising questionnaire called the Who Am I, as I mentioned earlier. And the idea is to give our viewers the opportunity to know you better. So in front of you, well, I'll be reading out a number of questions to you, and you'll then answer to the best of your ability.
I'll try.
Does this include a question on how many wives you have?
Oh, well.
Oh, no, ex-wives he has.
How many ex-wives do you have?
So help me God.
So are you really ready for this segment? Because I get super excited anytime.
I'm nervous.
Oh, don't be nervous. It's not hard. Right. Okay, the first question is, what can't you do without?
Tea.
So it's tea. It's very true.
Interesting. Where do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
In the Gambia.
In the Gambia? What 3 words best describes you?
3 words. That's a tough one. I am Demba.
I am Demba. Those are the 3 words. Interesting. So who are your heroes?
My heroes. African heroes, I think of Nkrumah. I'm a Nkrumahist. Patrice Lumumba and Thomas Sankara.
So what is your most vivid childhood memory?
My most vivid childhood memory is when my mom beat me and I wish him bad, and I got to my dad and my dad was like, your mom loves you more than I love you. So that's something I carry. I hope I'm going to carry for the rest of my life.
Oh, that's sweet. What is the funniest thing that have ever happened to Demba Kandeh?
Funniest thing? I guess I checked in at an airport and fell asleep, and almost a minute before departure I had my name. I got to the line and they closed the gate.
Aww.
That was funny, and
that was bad. What's the best thing that have ever happened to you?
Best thing that happened to me is probably teaching at the University of the Gambia.
Wow.
That's a good choice. Yeah.
Interesting. So what's your favorite Gambian dish?
Super kanja.
So are you ready to get some super kanja today?
Yes.
What is the one thing people would be surprised to know about you?
You know, I'm a public folk, so I mean, most of my life is open secret, but yeah, I think people are surprised to know that I speak basic Dutch.
So what can't you do without? That's the final question for you.
I think that was the first question.
Yeah, it's tea. I think I said that.
What? I was just trying to play because I was just trying to make sure that you still have the same answers.
I think what people will be surprised to know about him is that he has so many ex-wives.
Yeah, I remember that question being the first one because I was expecting him to say me.
Oh,
but he didn't. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kandeh. It's been a pleasure having you all in the brunch, and we hope to consequently have you on another session of the show, hopefully. So we wish you all the best in your academics and media work.
Thank you so much, and good luck here.
All right, thank you very much. Now to my co-host, your final words.
I would say it's been an interesting session, like always. I look forward to most eventful week where we only get good news from our government and from our part as citizens as well.
Mustafa? I'm afraid this week there may not be good news.
Good news.
Published Faraba Banter Commission may come this week. If it comes, we will not have
hopefully
good news.
Good news will come from there as well.
Well, okay. If arrest and prosecution is good news, then yes, sure.
Thank you very much, viewers. It has been a wonderful time spending with you on the Brunch Show. Still reminding you that this show is often hosted every Saturday by 12 noon. And I still remain your host, Joy Mwama. See you.
Now that I have saved some money to build my dream home, I'm really confused about which estate company to approach. My friend had a bad experience with a particular estate agency after completing his payment and could not even get his title deed. This is serious.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Thank you.
My name is Oli. I'm from EJ Investments.
Understood.
Thank you.
You know, I must say you came at a very right time.
Really?
I was thinking about houses.
Great.
What can your company offer me?
EJ Investments can offer you a lot. We're unique in the market.
Okay.
We own our properties and we ensure that they're developed with modern technologies. They're affordable and they're a strategic location. We don't just sell pieces of land, but we create settlements.
What makes your company different from others?
We're different from all real estate companies in the Gambia because what we have to offer is affordability, safety, and security. We ensure that you get a legal contract from when you pay your deposit. And within 4 weeks of paying your final settlement, we make sure you receive your title deed.
4 weeks?
4 weeks.
That's interesting.
Yes. Now tell me, what real estate service you need?
It's absolutely EJ Investment and Real Estate Agency.